turn it over to Tom from CherryRoad,
Okay.
an awesome and consistent and faithful sponsor of the Council of the Great City Schools. So Tom, we will let you roll with it.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, it's I think about when we move these things virtual, I think about what it used to be like when it was physical. And if we'd be in a large conference rooms or a ballroom somewhere, and I could see, Bob standing outside ushering people back in after break. So we don't have that. We don't have, Bob can't go call it. He can't call everybody and tell them get back in the room. So we understand people will trickle in. It's no problem. I get it. So hi, everybody. I'm Tom Helt. I'm an executive vice president at CherryRoad. We're, as Michelle said, longtime partner with the Council of Great City Schools. Really love what you all do and what you stand for, and the ability for us to participate in these, just like we're a member. And so with that, not a big overview on CherryRoad. We're out there on the sponsor page. You can kind of read about us. We're a longtime systems integrator and ERP implementer with products like PeopleSoft and Oracle eBusiness and Oracle Cloud, which Bill will be talking a little bit about today. So just happy to be here, happy to be a sponsor. I'm going to let Bill Onasik introduce himself. I'm glad he agreed to present to you today. Bill's got a great perspective, a long tenured history as an executive implementing these systems, and he's a unique, not to suck up to you too much, Bill, but a unique gift to Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. So I'll let him share a little bit about himself.
Thanks, Tom, and welcome everyone. Glad that you could attend this session. Delighted to be with you here today. It's a relatively cold and wet, rainy day here in Charlotte. So I'm sure it's probably worse where you are with a lot of snow and ice on the ground. So I'm not complaining, mind you. As Tom mentioned, my role is actually a bit unique. I'm a senior executive at Bank of America. That's my full-time job, if you will. They pay my salary, but I'm part of a relatively small group at our company that are part of a Leaders on Loan, Executive on Loan program. And really what that is it's a program where we give back to the community, where we give not just our people, but our expertise and methodology. So my background is all about managing change. I've managed probably some of the largest transformations in the world. I managed all of our global digitalization work for the bank from about 2013 through about 2019. And I was doing some volunteer work with the Charlotte City Schools, talking with the superintendent and chief technology officer, CHRO, and CFO about what it takes to manage cultural change and what a true transformation is. As I spent time with them, they wanted more time, so we got back together. We started to review some methodology and overarching plans, and that eventually led to them requesting to the bank if I could come out full time and really help them manage this multi-year transformation. So most of my career has been in the corporate world, but I've also spent a good bit of time as a management consultant as well. I will note all of my kids are the beneficiary of public schools, as am I and my wife. And my mom's a retired school teacher after 28 years here in Union County, just down the road from where I live, and was delighted with this opportunity to give back to our school system. So my role is as an executive on loan is a modernization program exec. I report into our superintendent and our CHRO, our CFO, and our CTO, and I lead a large program of work to move us to a modern target state that we're going to talk about here in a bit, largely driven by Oracle Cloud Computing. But in addition to that, I'm also leading our operational excellence work more broadly. So not just about Oracle Cloud, it's about new badging systems, it's about managing all of our workers as we think about the world that we live in and the blended workforce with contingent labor. We're putting in some additional processes and controls in place to be able to better manage that blended workforce. And then I'm also partnering very closely with the state. Part of what we're doing here, and Tom's going to tell you about this here in a second, is we're kind of the first out the gate of hopefully many within North Carolina to implement this Oracle Cloud platform. So our job is to hopefully get the right foundation in place, so that we can build off of that here in the future. So with that, why don't I turn it back over to you, Tom, for a little bit so you can talk about the overall context of this program here in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, I'd love to. It is a little bit unique, and I think the audience will be kind of interested in seeing kind of how things are structured for you all there in North Carolina, because it's maybe a little unique to what they've seen elsewhere in the country. So in North Carolina, it's a very the school districts there are very I don't want to say centralized, but they're funded centrally from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Much of their funding, a combination of local, but much comes from the state level. So there's a lot of interaction with this, a lot more interaction maybe with the state than you may find in other states because of that funding. And so there's reports that go back and forth, and financial information, teacher information, and numerous other things. So the state realized that they were having an issue from a technology perspective that they felt needed an overhaul. And as kind of the slide kind of alludes to here, back in 2016, they passed a law and they funded a program to modernize all of the school districts in the state of North Carolina, of which Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools has been a leader in that charge. So they went out to bid, and basically we're asking software vendors and implementers like ourselves alike, to propose the solutions to help the state get onto a common platform or platforms, if you will. And so what they decided to select two vendors, two solutions, CherryRoad with an Oracle solution and Tyler Technologies with the other, and basically present it to the school districts as the two choices that they would like them to choose from in order to modernize their technology, just to have common platforms that everybody was working from. So thus started this initiative, and I don't want to say soon thereafter because it's been a long process, but Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools jumped in along with some others to kind of lead the way. So again, another unique aspect of this is the collaboration, and that's one of the things I would tip my hat the most to with the Council of Great City Schools is the collaboration. It's amazing to watch you all come together from different parts of the country, share what you've learned, share your successes, share your failures to help everyone out. And I think these districts that you kind of see on the slide here, these are the districts that are implementing the solution that we have, the Oracle solution, and the tons of collaboration around templates and processes that are common, and even some that weren't common that are becoming common with each other to help one another improve. And again, they're leading the way for several other districts. Again, Charlotte-Mecklenburg is the second largest district in the state, so they play a big role in paving the way for a lot of other smaller districts that can take advantage of the kind of things that they're able to do. So some really great stuff here. Again, we wanted to share that they're not alone in this, and I know that Guilford is also a member of the Council of Great City Schools as well. So that's the background. Now Bill's going to kind of dive a little bit more into what does this modernization mean to CMS and kind of where they're at in the process. So hold on to your seatbelt because there's a lot coming.
Hey, thanks, Tom. And team, I've done a lot of these sessions on both sides, and I know the death by PowerPoint can get to be a bit mundane. So I do want this to be as interactive as we can. I'll go through some of this content here and try to leave as much time as I can for questions. So one of the things that I've kind of learned through my many years managing large global transformations is it's really hard sometimes to keep your entire audience with you throughout the change. And so what you have in front of you here is what I like to call a placemat. Very simple document, and it's something we create at the very beginning of a multi-year transformation. And then we just update, same format, right? Just update a little bit in terms of the latest and greatest progress and next steps. So I won't drain this slide, but I'll just kind of quickly walk you through it. To the top left there, what's the background? Well, Tom already did a really good job of teeing this up. And this isn't atypical in this industry, right? We have dated technology that's becoming unsustainable, so much so that it takes substantial investments just to maintain a status quo. Why is that? Well, when we implemented technology, it turns out that our industry has some pretty unique requirements. And unfortunately, a lot of the technology that we would use, especially the large scale technology, has been molded more for the corporate world traditionally. So what did that mean to us? It meant that if we wanted to use a large scale product, right, which we implemented Lawson and CMS, call it 20 years ago, we had to actually customize that package software, which meant we were writing custom code against a package solution. So every time we wanted to go and make an upgrade, we have to now regression test all of that custom code that we did, which usually meant we don't upgrade, right? It's not just K through 12 who fell into this trap. Many, many, many corporations I've been a part of in my life have also had a very similar problem. It seems so easy. It feels like the right thing to do to customize, but once you get into that situation and you can't upgrade easily anymore, you become in this very uncomfortable place where it's unsustainable. So we also have this interesting phenomena of what we call best of breed computing. Best of breed computing, I'm not sure who came up with that name, is I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the best point solution for everything that I want. So I'm going to get a best recruiting system. I'm going to have the best payroll system. I'm going to get the best timekeeping system. And then I'm going to try to integrate all that together. That's kind of what we call best of breed. That technology or that approach creates a whole lot of overhead. A lot of overhead in terms of complex data integration, a lot of overhead in terms of very confusing user experience, right? And so what we're doing through this program is we're actually putting in a single integrated cloud computing platform to solve all of these issues. And cloud computing is very unique here because if you do it right, you'll do it once and only once, and you'll never have to do it again because cloud computing by definition continues to upgrade as you're sharing the same platform with literally millions of users, thousands of corporations around the world. So the background here is obviously we're trying to upgrade and modernize all of our business systems. So this is about all of our HR processes, but also operational, vendor management, procurement, and finance. So that's the roadmap we have there at the bottom, and we won't drain that, but you get a sense for kind of where we are right now. If I was going to tell you why we're doing this first and foremost, yeah, it's about technology, but really it's more than that. It's about an opportunity to create a more integrated experience for our employees and managers, right? We want to make interactions easier for them because they then can focus on our core mission, right? Our core mission is about teaching and student learning. And right now we're distracting all of our employees from that core mission because we got a very complicated infrastructure. We also want to become more data driven, right? Everybody says it, but very few organizations have been able to get there. One of the other things that we have with cloud computing is for the first time, right, with technology, we have the intersection of transactions and reporting in the same system. Always before, we would have to have our transactional system separated from our reporting system because we didn't have enough computing power. But we now have the ability to do true real-time database decisions, which is, I will tell you, probably the greatest benefit we got at Bank of America when I implemented our solution, and certainly one of the benefits that we're driving towards here at CMS with the Oracle platform. So we are now just a few months away. So July 1st, we will be going live with our Oracle system of record for all of our core HR functions. And then following that in October, we'll go live with Oracle for all of our core finance transactions. So let's talk just a little bit about the case for change. I talked about this just a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss this key point. Whenever you're implementing any change, it's very easy for us to think we know what our users want, right? Well, we're all, employees to some extent, so we have to have a sense for what the employee experience is. That'd be logical, right? But the problem with that is we're not really understanding that outside-in feedback. So what we did before we embarked on this program is we paused, we took a step back. We went out to our employees and managers and we said, hey, you tell us what you think of our current state processes and the experiences that you have, whether it's going out and viewing your statement of earnings and payroll, whether it's enrolling in benefits, whether it's requesting a requisition for something through procurement. Rate our progress, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, very satisfied, very dissatisfied, and then tell us what we could do to make it better. Now, you got to be pretty brave when you go out and you cast a wide net like that, because very few people are going to tell you, man, everything's great. They're going to tell you what you probably don't want to hear in some instances, and they're going to make sure that you understand how painful things are. But that is a very healthy process for a transformation like this, because it allows you to frame up this work based off of their feedback. And it also allows us to really laser focus in on the key moments that matter for our employees. You know, if you just think about your experience as an employee, there are certain things that are more important to you than others. And if we can kind of fine tune those things and cull those out of everything else, we can then ensure that we fix those first and foremost, because we don't have unlimited resources. So that was the first step along this path. Employee experience assessment, let's baseline satisfaction across all of those experiences, HR and finance, and then let's measure going forward our incremental improvement. The second thing we did on this journey is we did what we call a process assessment. Similar, right? It's an assessment, but this is more from our operational team's perspective, right? So what we're trying to do here is we're going back and we're looking at defining the service. And I say service and not process, because often we talked about our operations as processes, and it's more contemporary and more customer focused to talk about everything we do as a service, right? We have a payroll service. We have a benefits service. So we describe what that service is. We talk about what the various inputs are and the outputs of that service. We talk about how we measure success for those services, right? Whether it's a qualitative or quantitative metric, how do we measure success? And then we talk about what are the key pain points along the related to that particular service area. So that's the process assessment work. And as we looked at the process assessment work and we looked at the employee experience assessment work, we quickly learned that through an integrated platform, we could gain a whole lot of what I call step change enhancements. Literally, paper-based to fully automated is the transformation that we're driving here. And I should also note that part of that process assessment work and that service overview is about the culture change. Culture change of our operational teams to become more customer-centric in everything that we do. The last kind of assessment that we did was a technology assessment, right? We needed to understand the current state, and we needed to understand the cost of that current state, and then we needed to look at that in terms of what a better future state could be with an integrated Oracle platform. So that was the kind of the tee up, the case for the change for this transformation. And honestly, I would say for any transformation that you ever want to do, if you could do those three assessments, employee experience assessment, process assessment, technology assessment, then define the target state and march towards that target state with the benchmark of watching the incremental change and the incremental improvements across those key metrics. So you probably had a chance to read these key drivers and key outcomes. I'm not going to read all of these for you. Suffice it to say, this is all about creating a more digital, right, environment, easy and accessible experiences for our employees, mobile-enabled experiences, right? This day and age, our employees have expectations. Those expectations are for consumerized technology. We all use Amazon, right? We're used to that level of customer-centric solutions. And I will tell you, my experience so far in K through 12 is we got a long way to go to get to that more consumerized experience. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, informed decisions, real-time insights. So a picture sometimes says 1,000 words. You can see on the bottom left there, multiple different platforms, batch processing integration, very complicated experience, complicated architecture. Roll forward to the target state, we got one single experience, one solution, right? Covering all these various functions, which allows us to be much more effective and efficient. And it has the built-in integration, of course, as well. So now I want to talk about just some key success factors. And these are certainly true for, you know, a cloud implementation like what we're going through here with Oracle, but they're even more broad here. Most of these are just key success factors that I would say apply to any type of implementation transformation that you want to achieve. So first, make this about transformation. Don't make this about just another technology change. It's way too easy to do that, right? It's very easy to just say, oh, I'm just implementing Oracle. Well, great, right? If that's your approach, are you really going to get the people, process, and culture change and improvements that you want to achieve? Probably not, right? So start with that. And then do what we talked about, right? Frame up the transformation in the eyes of your stakeholders, right? Talk to the actual users, the end users, the employees, the managers, or students and parents if it's a solution that's more of a student-facing solution. That's a step that so many people miss, and I got to tell you, it's one of the most foundational steps to frame up a successful transformation, to really understand how you're doing and performing in the current state so that you can understand how you can really improve those moments that matter. One of the challenges with cloud computing, you probably have heard of this, is it requires you to adopt standard processes, right? Standard processes, because this is a solution that goes across all industries, right? So there's a lot of advantages to that because we're actually implementing the same software that JP Morgan, right, one of the largest financial institutions in the world, just finished implementing. So the advantages are we're getting the best practices, right? And all of that intellectual capital that they and all the other large companies have put into making these systems operate better. The downside is we have to use their standard processes. We don't want to fall back into that trap of customizing things. Because really, when you think about it, when you think about business systems, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, I would argue, right? Your processes are the same. You might have some unique requirements, but your process needs are the same. So why not embrace the best of breed practices that are out there, right? Why not use those solutions that have been tried and true? So how do you do that? Instead of taking your current state process, start with the standard process from the cloud solution, right? And then ask yourself the hard question, why couldn't this work for me? Often you'll find out it's because you've always done it a different way. And more often than not, there's a better way if you really challenge yourself and force your team to really focus in on adopting that standard solution. One of the big benefits of cloud computing is this notion of agile and rapid prototype. So in the old days, I have way too many scars from managing change my whole career. But in the old days, we would go through a process to collect requirements, right? And we would sit down and talk to all our business stakeholders. We would then go off and talk with technology about how we're going to design those, and then we'd go build them, and then we come back, right? And we'd be showing them, right? Really, usually during that first stage of testing. And what would happen? Real awkward pause, right? Deer in the headlights, like as they're looking at the solution that we built, saying that's not anything close to what I wanted, right? And so what cloud computing does for us is it allows us to visualize the solution and the design, right? So we actually have both the requirements and the design, and we can see it. We can walk through it together, and we can say, oh, I don't really like how that works. Let's tweak that a little bit. And then they go back and they make a configuration change, and now we quickly visualize that change. So that's kind of the value, if you will, of cloud computing. Number 6 here, keep it simple. So no, we can't customize cloud computing, but that doesn't mean we won't still overcomplicate it. When you think about a solution that's been built for so many other clients and other industries, it can do almost anything you want it to do, but it doesn't mean you should, right? So you can fall into this trap of over configuring and over complicating it. And you really want to try to use this as an opportunity to standardize, simplify, and improve. Strong program governance. Yes, I'm a project geek, I'll admit it, right? I've managed large change, small change, and I believe strongly in establishing a governance model that allows you to drive key decisions and clear roadblocks. So I have a slide here in a minute that will just as an illustrative example of what we did here and something that might apply for you as well. I also believe in maintaining a 100,000-foot view, that we are here, and I have an example of that as well, and it'll shock you because it looks very complicated, but that very complicated page, remember, probably represents, I don't know, tens of thousands of lines on detailed project plans. It's a great way of keeping us all connected. We are here on this multi-year journey. Clarifying roles and responsibilities is always important, but it's especially important when we have internal and external teams. And we need to establish some stretch targets here along the way, because work will always fill the space allocated. And so I can't overemphasize that. It's really hard because you're taking people who have normal day jobs and you're wanting to stretch them. When I do that in the bank or other large companies, I have this kind of carrot I can hold out called a big bonus, right? And I can incentivize them. We don't often have that in this industry. So, I think it's important to establish healthy stretch targets, but remember, it's not all about the date. That's probably something that we in this industry perhaps emphasize a little bit too much. And I know it probably is surprising for a project geek to say that, but it's actually more of an old school way of thinking to manage projects by the date, right? Gotta hit the date, because what does it do? It drives the wrong behavior, right? You gotta be careful what you measure and what the emphasis of your measurements, because if you say it's all about the date, you'll hit the date. Now, you may have gone live at the expense of some really important functionality that you had to push into the next phase. And if you had just waited a month, you might have had a much better experience when you went live because you weren't quite ready yet. But if you make it all about the date, you'll hit the date, but you may not hit your overarching business case, which is much more important in the grand scheme of things. All right, just a couple more here because I want to leave some time for questions. Can't let perfect get in the way of much, much better. This is probably the biggest trap that many will fall into with cloud computing. It's like you want every single possible requirement. You've got, this one group of 3 people in an organization of 20,000 that have some special unique requirement, and you're going to spend hundreds of hours trying to solve for that versus there's a workaround, right? Yeah, maybe it's not perfect for those 3 people, but so what? We got to focus in on getting the core stable, implemented, so that then we can actually continue to tweak it over time. One of the other items I would mention here is this industry is not known for having great current state process and technology documentation. That may come across as a surprise to you, and maybe you are an exception. That's fantastic. My experience is we don't have that discipline. Why? I think it comes down to probably budget constraints, right? Budget constraints, because if we've got people that are stretched and we got to keep the lights on, the last thing we're going to worry about doing is documenting the process on how to turn the lights on, right? We're going to keep the lights on. So the reason why I put this out there, though, is don't underestimate how big of a gap it is if you don't have that documentation, because you got to recreate decades of complex business rules through conversation. And when you do that, you're never going to get it all right. And you're going to find out that in the testing, there's a whole lot of additional requirements that the team couldn't remember off the top of their head. It's just a reality. So just be aware of that. Robust testing culture. Again, my experience so far is we probably don't have great discipline around use cases, test cases, scenarios, right? And so putting in the right structure here around how to test, creating a little bit of a testing center of excellence so that you can use this program to really advance your ability to test, I think is very important. And having a centralized tool to be able to manage that testing effort, if possible, is very effective as well. Driving documentation discipline, it's just the reality of it, right? Whenever we're in project world, you have this thing called fog of war, and everybody forgets things. So documenting every meeting, documenting the outcomes, documenting the actions, and helping to drive decisions through facts is super important. Minimizing historical data conversion, we could talk about this for hours. Bottom line on top is, whenever you move from one system to another system, if you try to take your data from this system and put it into this system, it's apples to oranges in many instances. I might have two fields over here that are only one field over here, or vice versa. It means I have to recreate history in order to bring all that data over. So we have to start with as clean a slate as possible. We still have the data available to us, but we don't try to convert all the historical data into our transactional system of record. Standard security roles, again, goes back to don't make it overcomplicated. You could, but there's no need to. Interfaces are never easy. I'm sure anybody that's experienced the work it takes to build interfaces knows it's very difficult. So start early and or plan to start early and start earlier if you can. Lastly, don't forget about operational readiness and the overall importance of audience readiness, right? We talked about starting a transformation by understanding the audience's viewpoint. Well, it's really important that you plan to make sure that you have all of the audience impacts. How is the change going to impact them? And what is your plan to navigate them through this change through communication, engagement, and meetings and training, so that they have the right level of readiness to adopt the change. And of course, active and visual executive sponsorship, you have to put that on there. I was gonna have a 21 here, but I didn't wanna give Tom a big head, I'm kidding. But I would say pick a good partner, right? Pick a great partner. CherryRoad has been a really good partner for us, and I can't say that enough. No partner's perfect, but having somebody that brings great value and great experienced resources that understands the industry is so important to your success. So just a couple of quick slides here. I'm not going to go through these. We are going to provide these for reference. I mentioned this before in terms of a program governance structure, right? So this gives you a sense of what the structure could look like, starting at the bottom with some project routines, some integration routines, program management routines, and then steering committee, ultimately leading up to executive updates. And then out to the right, you'll see what you would typically want to achieve, right? What are the outcomes you would want from those various routines? This is the somewhat intimidating but highly simplified view of a detailed project plan that talks about all of the work it takes to implement a solution like this in cloud computing, from the functional configuration to the data conversion, your reporting and integrations, any of your check-to-check compares for payroll, of course, the employee readiness work, operational readiness. We didn't talk a lot about that, but we need to document our SOPs and ensure that we understand how we're going to use the new system in the target state. And then, of course, any policy changes are important, especially in this industry where a lot of times we need to get those ratified through the board. So I know there's a lot on this page, but I think that the takeaway here is there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of those things are happening in parallel. So having something that allows you to know at this point in time, here's where you are, here's what you should be working on, here's what's coming down the pipe, gives you a nice visual just to keep everyone together. So I promised I was going to give you plenty of time for questions and answers. There are some additional slides in the back here just about how with the benefits we're getting from the state or to the state for this whole program. And then also just overall benefits of a modern cloud system and why you would want to look at cloud-based technology. A little bit more on the programs, and then finally a little bit more on different roles that you would typically have related to transformation. But let's open it up for questions and see what's on your mind.
Who wants to be first? Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat.
While we're waiting, Bill, can I ask a quick question? On your, in the beginning of the presentation, you and Tom talked about the idea of an executive on loan. That is just so interesting. How long are you on loan?
I'm on loan through the end of this year, which will get us through our initial implementations of HR and ERP finance. And then I'll go back to my role there at the bank.
And do you, in anticipating that, you know, and it goes to a sustainability question, is somebody shadowing your role while you're in this kind of loans, you know, kind of a world? So someone will step to the plate and be able to pick up from where you left off and support this effort.
Absolutely. So we've been kind of working as in parallel here together to ensure that it'll be a smooth transition. The good news is this is kind of a one-time big implementation that we'll still have little implementations, but these two are the biggies. But absolutely, somebody will be there and ready to take on the running of the overall program, right? And that's kind of my role as a program executive, partnering with Tom and his team as the implementer to ensure that we're achieving our target state benefits.
And one other question, I'm assuming there's somebody kind of parallel to kind of the role that you play in the districts on the state level since you're integrating these systems together?
Absolutely. We have a robust kind of management structure in place that allows us to collaborate across all of our districts. Every other week, we have a call that includes all of the districts that are looking to modernize, and we talk about common problems, pain points, and ultimately look for common solutions, right? Ways in which we can still meet the letter and spirit of the law, but in a much more effective way through technology.
Great, thank you.
Yep, good questions.
Anyone? Questions? Bob, you have to unmute yourself.
All right. Sorry. Who's the executive sponsor of the work in Charlotte?
Ultimately, it's our superintendent is the sponsor. Like, we have regular meetings with the superintendent. Whenever we have a change like this that impacts all employees, right, and it goes across multiple functions, HR, finance, all of our operations, right, and technology, we look to get sponsorship from the top. It doesn't mean I need a lot of his time, but I have a regular monthly basis with him so that we can ensure that we've got his backing and his support to really drive the change that we need to see. One of the biggest challenges you'll have in this type of transformation is people like to say that they want to change and they're open to change, but reality is most of us get stuck in our old ways. So we got to have somebody that can help us break those ties. And a lot of time it's the meeting before the meeting where all of the real issues get solved. So the goal is never to take something difficult to the superintendent, but he is the sponsor and he's there to be the tiebreaker if we need him. But it also creates the incentive for everybody underneath to get aligned, collaborate, and to come up with the right solution.
And you have the evident, the obvious support of the CFO, Sheila Shirley, and Carol Stomper, and your HR executive?
Absolutely, Christine, yes. And Derek is our CTO. We've got them in a steering committee every other week. It's one of the ground rules I put in place from the get-go is you're going to protect this time. This time is going to be 90 minutes every 2 weeks. We may not need it all, but I need you there. I need you focused, and they have lived up to that commitment, and that's really helping us to ensure that we move this work forward.
What did you find was the current state of technology in the district? Multiple standalone systems, systems that have been customized so to avoid changing workflows?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a custom Lawson solution that has literally thousands of lines of custom code for payroll to meet unique requirements like installment pay. Look, I'll be honest, I didn't fully appreciate the complexity of the regulation that we have to live with, at least in North Carolina, and I'm sure it's in other districts as well. But things like benefit escrow, I've never dealt with before, right? The whole concept of, well, you know, I've got people who don't work in the summer, but they still need to be able to pay for their benefits in the summer. That's a unique requirement. Installment pay, right? Teachers that work 10 months but want to get paid for 12 months, that's law. That's not an easy requirement in a payroll solution, but we've been able to solve all of those with a common cloud-based computing platform so that we never have to deal with custom code again.
As I remember, the student information system that Charlotte used was really a state-required system that was unique to the needs of the state, but didn't really provide a lot of utility to the district for the things that they were interested in. So this work here is being driven by the state, and it will be true across all the school districts in North Carolina.
Over time, yes. So it's sponsored by the state, but each district has to make up their own mind of when they want to do it and which solution they want to use. And then we partner with the state to ultimately implement. We're on the front end of it. So we've got a lot of partnership because we're building standard interfaces to the state for payroll and position information so that we can create that real-time reporting, and we can get out of this business of huge, large batch files of information that we're just pushing to the state for basic reporting purposes. I mean, one of the advantages of cloud computing is we can create a role in Oracle and give that role to anybody in the world, right? So why pump them all of this information if they can answer their own question? Yes, they still need some information, but they have much more visibility through this program.
Is there a program management office that has been set up to oversee that the work is going to be done on time, on budget? And where does that program management office sit, and who does it report to?
Yeah, so the program management office sits with me in CMS, and then I'm part of the program management team. Dr. Spano, who ultimately reports into Catherine Truitt, our new state superintendent, fantastic leader, by the way. I had a chance to spend some one-on-one time with her. And so we have a program management structure at the state to help us to break any ties across the different districts. If, we wanted to see something a certain way for a chart of accounts and the state wanted to see it a different way, and maybe a different district had a different answer, we got to harmonize all that. So we need that program structure sponsored through Catherine Truitt and the state superintendent to be able to drive the right target state.
So that's where the program management office resides, then, is at the state?
At the state for the statewide items, right? So think all of the integration to the state and what have you. We have our own program structure for our implementation because this is our solution.
Right. And that will mirror the state? The district solution will mirror the state's solution?
Yeah, so we're building what we call a template, right? One of the nice things about cloud computing is since it's one code base, our template can really be applied anywhere, right? I mean, if you contracted with CherryRoad, they could bring our template and you could start with that, and that would expedite your implementation because it takes a long time to build the initial template for all the reports, the processes, the integrations. But once you have that, it's a single code base. So you can literally just pick it up and pop it anywhere you want. And yeah, you're going to have to tweak it a little bit because each district's going to have some unique things that they want to see. Maybe they divide their schools up a slightly different way. They don't have our concept of learning communities, but for the most part, we're solving this in a common way so we can implement this same solution across multiple districts. And as Tom mentioned, we have other districts that are with us right now, including Guilford and Gaston that we're working with.
Is that
Charles?
template
Oh, sorry.
proprietary?
It's proprietary, I think, only from the standpoint of it's the, I guess, ultimately belongs to the state. But I think the nice thing about these types of conferences is the collaboration, and our vision here is, hey, once we have a report that solves a unique thing for us, we can just give the schematic for that report, and in Guilford or Gaston or any other county that's on Oracle can pop that in there and instantly have the same report with their information in it. So that's the big advantage of cloud computing.
Mhm. Charles, did you have a question? I see your hand up and we have some comments in the chat room.
Yeah, just one, well, a couple, but I'll just ask this one. So in Missouri, at least, we have kind of tiered governance, based upon the size of the school district. And I assume there's a similar thing in North Carolina. Like, how do you solve for the fact that there are different governance rules based upon the size of the school district when you're trying to do this kind of one size fits all piece?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Charles. That's why we call it a template, right? It's a blueprint. So you take the template and the blueprint. We're a very large, right, district. When you think of 150-some thousand kids, right, and 20,000 employees, we're pretty large, right? But so if you had a really small district, you might not need all of the overhead. But if you took that and you started with that and you walk through the processes, what you're going to find is, well, the processes are still the same. Maybe I don't have as much kind of bureaucratic red tape. I don't need all these complicated approvals. I can just have one approver versus multiple approvers. All of that is kind of the things that can be tweaked in the template. When you think about paying people, right, you're going to pay people the same way we pay people. You might have some different formulas, right, for the different components, but we're building a solution that includes federal funding, right, for paying people, state funding for paying people, local funding for paying people, comp time. You go through the whole list, right? We've already solved all of those things for you or anybody else with CherryRoad's help, of course. And so now you get to look at those and say, yeah, I need these components, but my rules for them are going to be slightly different. And that's just a configuration change.
Jamie, you had a comment in the chat. Michelle, can you?
Sure. Let me scroll down. Okay, Jamie Warren from Buffalo. The greatest barrier I've found is implementation. This is a heavy district-wide lift and needs an implementation plan that includes staff training and making sure the changes penetrate the organization.
Absolutely agree. And it ties into operational readiness and audience readiness. So we don't have time to go through all the details, but I would definitely offer up a follow-up conversation that Tom and I and some of the CherryRoad folks could even get on with you and talk you through how their methodology and how we manage that. The simple answer is, for audience readiness, we go through and we look at the current state versus the target state for each and everything, whether it's looking at a pay state, the statement of earnings, what's changing? How is that going to feel to that particular user? And how do we help to make sure they're ready to understand how that's going to work? A better example might be, we're going from paper-based requests for absence to fully automated. So how is that going to work, right? How do I, as an employee, put in my request for time off? How does my manager then get that request in email and click on the approve button, which they can do right there in email? They don't even have to go into Oracle. So it's understanding all of the audiences, and then what are the impacts for each audience? Once we have the impacts, we understand the severity of the impact, and then we put a plan around that. What type of training is required? What type of cultural change and maybe some manager training do we need? What kind of quick reference card needs to be in place to make that change transparent and very easy? Because let's face it, training's great, But in many instances, you take training and then you forget it by the time you go to use it. So having that real-time inline help with a quick reference card is much more valuable, I find, than a whole lot of robust, long training.
And Marco had a comment from LA. Marco, do you want to share your thoughts on this? I don't know if he's,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah, basically, like our experience is that the readiness assessment, it's kind of like the one that helps us a lot. Really taking time to communicate what we're trying to accomplish, having people to actually go through a process of focus groups or in-depth interviews, you know, and just preparing the conditions for the change. You know, it's almost like you pay now or you pay later. So I believe in the concept of taking the time before than later on.
Well said, Marco. Couldn't agree more. And I also say that top-down sponsorship. I mean, one of the things that we're using as we tee this change up for the broader audience is a video from our superintendent. Right? We felt it's that important that everybody understands that we've got the backing from our board and our superintendent on this change. But your points are very well taken. The more time we spend on the front end preparing for readiness, whether it's audience readiness or operational readiness, the better we're going to be when we do go live. And on operational readiness, you know, not just documenting the processes in an SOP, but also doing a service rehearsal, right? Truly going through and running payroll several times, right? Or whatever the task might be. We need to make sure that everybody understands how they're going to do it and what their role is.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, this is Keith. A little biased because I'm Oracle, but great presentation, Bill. But one of the things you mentioned earlier, I really would like to emphasize that on any project, whether it's ERP or SIS project, you have to have buy-in from the top, and that's what CMS seems to have. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the success that's going on.
Well said, Keith. Couldn't agree more. With any type of change, right? I mean, what any company, any change, it's the success is commensurate with the senior leader sponsorship, and not just sponsorship, but engagement in the change.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Great point, Keith. Anyone else? My great teaching pause. Oh, seeing no hands and seeing no comments, Michelle, I think we're a special thanks and shout out to Tom and Bill for a wonderful presentation, and certainly food for thought. As you can see from some of the comments from our districts. And Michelle, I'll hand it over to you for next steps.
Nope, that was terrific information. Thank you both. Next steps, we will come back together at 2 o'clock for, let me make sure I get it right. It is 2 to 3 o'clock, Shelby County, encouraging employee engagement, wellness, and morale in a virtual space. And so take a break, get done whatever you need to get done, and come back and join us at 2 o'clock for another wonderful district presentation. But thank you so much, Bill and Tom. That was really wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bill.
Thanks all.
Send me those slides.
Bye-bye.
So long.